Welcome everybody to the Archetypical Mind study group. This is a study group that we started because I don't know anything about the archetypes and I really wanted everybody's help to kind of wrap my mind around the archetypes. So this is going to be pretty much a shared study with everybody. I always enjoy listening to everybody's opinions and points of view. So this is going to be kind of like a joint venture with all of us. There is a lot to study, so it probably will take us a long time to go through all the archetypes. I'm going to move it forward to a small housekeeping slide. We're going to be meeting bi-weekly. This was the cadence that felt most comfortable to most of the people, just to kind of get this heavy material down and bring it down to the roots of the mind. The meetings will be on Mondays at 10 a.m. Pacific, and they will look like this. We're going to be doing a 10-minute setting the intention for the meeting, creating a sacred space for all of us. As I was telling before we started the recording, I was really inspired by the European Law of One groups sessions. They were using something called the prayer of light, which is just such a beautiful thing. I put it into my daily practice in the morning. So every morning, apart from doing my meditations and the rest of the things that I do, I'm also doing the prayer of light. We will then have like a 10-minute session of reflections. If people have something that they want to share, realizations they came to, questions lingering from the previous session. After that, we're going to be doing like a 15 to 20-minute introduction to the topic. So it might be a card or it might be a group of cards together. We will be doing some research and collect quotes from Ra and quotes from Kuo and from other resources as time goes by. And then Andy is going to do like a 10-minute meditative contemplation. And I want Andy to talk about it a little bit right now, if you can.
Yes, so the contemplation is based on the workbook that I put together, and that's based on how I worked with the archetypes in the past couple of years. And it's about engaging with it at the heart level, and sitting with it and finding that archetype within ourselves. So hopefully you would have had time in the 2 weeks prior to working with that particular archetype for that session to engage in that practice anyway. But in the guidebook, if you've seen it, each archetype is divided into 3 parts. So the first part is the questions to ask yourself. So for this round, I will probably only have time to do that question part. The second part is about the embodiment of the archetype, where I invite you to take on the posture of the figures in the archetype. I know that's probably going to be quite difficult physically, given that like we're kind of in various different spaces. So yeah, I'll probably just do the first part this time round. I feel like the archetypes, it's a lifetime of work. I don't think I'll ever be finished working with the archetypes. And I've been working with them for 5 years and I barely scratched the surface. So yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We were also talking a little bit about doing a creative exploration of the archetypes, and this is, we're going to be creative, so we'll see what happens with that. All of those sessions are actually going to be recorded. Everything outside of that yellow frame is not going to be recorded, just so you know. So after we're done with like the prepared part of the session, we're going to have a group discussion. And it really depends on how many people we're going to have. I'm going to channel my inner Jonathan Tong, and I'm going to be brutal with just allotting time for people to talk, because we really do want to hear from everybody. I don't want anybody to just sit there and have something to say and they won't be able to say it. So we will be going through, I don't know, we'll give, depending on how many people are going to be there, we're going to have like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes for everybody to say their initial thoughts. And then if we're done and not everybody wants to talk, we can come back to somebody who wanted to continue talking. And then at the end, we're going to be closing the space a certain way. So that's about what a session is going to look like. So we want to start with what is the archetypical mind? I know that people here have different levels of engagement with the archetypes and engagement with the topic itself, but we kind of wanted to bring everybody kind of to the same place with this introduction of the archetypical mind. So Andy and I are going to go through the slides. I think Andy will do a slide. This is going to be fun. Okay, so the archetypical mind, as explained by Ra, is a foundational aspect of the deep mind, which serves as a blueprint for the evolution of mind, body, and spirit within the design of a specific logos, in our case, our logos. So these are quotes from sessions by Ra. The archetypical mind is a great and fundamental portion of the mind complex, one of its most basic elements and one of the richest sources of information for the seeker of the one infinite creator. That's from 8817. And then the archetypical mind is part of that mind which informs all experience. That's from 9014. Andy.
Right. Okay. I have just opened the wrong version of the PowerPoint, but I will read the next bit.
Are you seeing what I'm sharing, Andy?
No, I opened the old version. Hang on, let me open the new version.
Hold on, let me ask, are you guys seeing the slides that I'm sharing?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Are you? Oh, yes. The archetypical mind is distinct from both the cosmic mind and the personal subconscious. Ra explains that the archetypical mind is peculiar to the logos of this planetary sphere and is a refinement created specifically by this logos. Unlike the cosmic all-mind, it is unique to this particular design of evolution. Unlike the great cosmic all-mind, it contains refinements made by this logos, peculiar only to this logos. And before we move on, I was just wondering, does anyone have any questions about the structure of these meetings?
Good point.
I was wondering if, hello.
Hi.
I was wondering if you're going to share the PowerPoint afterwards.
Sure, if you guys want to, happy to share it.
Oh, nice. Then I don't have to take everything in note. I'll listen and yeah, easily. Thank you.
I think it
Okay.
could be helpful if you could maybe just type up the timing breakdown into the chat, because so we can know where we are in that, because the slide's already gone now.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. I cannot, if I leave the presentation right now.
I can do it. I'll do
Yeah,
it.
Andy will do it. Thank you, Andy. Okay, so is everybody familiar with this drawing of the conscious mind and everything all the way down to the roots of the mind? Just showing the location of the archetypical mind in this whole diagram. It's right there after the personal unconscious and the racial mind. and the planetary mind, but before the cosmic mind. Let's see. The archetypical mind acts as a blueprint for the third density mind, and it contains all facets which may affect mind or experience. The blueprints structures the relationship between conscious and unconscious processes, forming a foundation for personal evolution. So in 91, question 37, Ra says, the archetypical mind, when penetrated lucidly, is a blueprint of the builded structure of all energy expenditures and all seeking, without distortion. This, as a resource within the deep mind, is of great potential aid to the adept. Andy, over to you.
I'm just checking my audio. I've turned it down a bit. Is it still too really loud, or is it okay?
It's yeah, it's okay.
Okay, sure. Crow describes the archetypical mind as a framework for understanding oneself as a metaphysical being. It provides structures and identities within mythical systems that seekers in exploring and deepening their spiritual nature. The archetypical mind is a set of structures that create a way to think about the self as a metaphysical being. With a mythical system, there are characters with which one may find identity. Moving further into the roots of the tree of mind, we come to that portion which is called the archetypical mind. It is here that the blueprint for your evolutionary process is found, so that the influences that you experience from this source are of a fundamental nature. I love this bit, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the first quote, and I'm thinking, when they say within a mythical system there are characters with which one may find identity, and I'm thinking, is this kind of like being the archetype? I guess this is what they mean. Just becoming the archetype at will.
I'll talk more about that later.
Okay. Okay, another one from Kuo. The archetypical mind is a part of the deep mind of each entity. The roots of mind begin with that region closest to the conscious mind's threshold, and as one follows these roots, one finds various levels of group mind within the mind. The ethnic group mind, the geographical group mind, the political group mind, and so forth. Deeper than these are the planetary mind, the archetypical mind, and the all mind, or the knower that is the known. I just love Kuo.
The archetypical mind provides a tool for understanding one's path of spiritual evolution. It informs the processes of potentiation, experience, and transformation, offering clarity on how catalyst and learning are synthesized. Ra explains that studying the archetypes is not merely intellectual, but involves invoking and internalizing their meanings for self-realization. It is appropriate to study one form of constructed and organized distortion of the archetypical mind in depth in order to arrive at the position of being able to become and to experience archetypes at will. There are three systems Ra counts for the study of the archetypical mind: the Tarot, the Tree of Life, and the Sephiro and astrology.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that we have Erez from Israel with us on the call right now, and Erez has done extensive study on the Tree of Life, and if that would be okay, he might come and talk to us about that at some point. I think that would be awesome. Okay, so the origins of the tarot. The tarot was devised by the third density population of Venus and was perfected over generations. It was transferred to the Egyptians by Ra. The concept of the tarot originated within the planetary influence you call Venus, the product of many, many generations of work upon what we conceive to be the archetypical mind produced the tarot, which was used by our peoples as a training aid in developing the magical personality.
Ra taught the archetypes to the Egyptian priests who drew them on the walls of the Great Pyramid. Session 89.16. The way I understand this then, Ra gave these archetypical concepts to the priests of Egypt, who then drew them upon the walls of one of the chambers of the Great Pyramid. What was the technique of transmission of this information to the priests? At this time, was Ra walking the surface among the Egyptians, or was this done through some form of channeling? Ra, I am Ra. This was done partially through old teachings and partially through visions. Session 89.17, questioner. Then at this particular time, Ra had long since vacated the planet as far as walking among the Egyptians. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. Yes.
This is the shortest answer by Ra, for sure. Okay. The representation of the archetypes on the walls of the Great Pyramid were 95% accurate. So we are learning from a distortion after distortion after distortion. So Ra gave the archetypes to the Egyptians, and then what was on the walls was 95% accurate, but then there were other influences that were added into the tarot, and there's just like cultural of the time influences on the tarot, as we're going to see when we look into each archetype on its own. So again, there's a yes question answer. In other words, you might say that these were better than, say, 95% correct as far as representing what is on the walls of the Great Pyramid. And Dawn is referring to the pack of cards that we are going to study. And Ra says, I'm Ra, yes. And this one is how to best approach the study of the archetypes.
Okay, how to best approach the study. Ra recommends to look at each archetype individually and then to look into the relationship between them. To attempt to condense the archetypes is to make an erroneous attempt. Each archetype is a significant ding and sick or thing in itself with its own complex of concepts. While it is informative to study the relationships of one archetype to another, it can be said that this line of inquiry is secondary to the discovery of the purest gestalt, or vision or melody, which each archetype signifies to both the intellectual and intuitive mind. The significators of mind, body, and spirit complexes are complex in and of themselves, and the archetypes of catalyst, experience, transformation, and the great way are most fruitfully viewed as independent complexes which have their own melodies with which they may inform the mind of its nature.
So the order that Ra recommends to look at the archetypes, and Andy and I think that would be the best way for all of us to study them. First, we look at each and every card in trios, which I will show later in the cards. We're first doing the matrix of the mind and going on for each mind, body, and spirit. So Ra says, you should look at 1, 8, 15, 2, 9, 16, 3, 10, 17. I'll show you when I show the tableau of cards what it looks like. So we will probably be going through 1, 8, 15. Each of them will receive a session, and then we'll do a session that talks about all three of them together. And then we'll move on to 2, 9, and 16. And then we will have a session for all of them together. This is how we will go through. In this way, the fundamental relationships between mind, body, and spirit could begin to be discovered. For as one sees, for instance, the matrix of the mind in comparison to the matrices of body and spirit, one may draw certain tentative conclusions. And then phase 2 would be to study the relationships in pairs. When at length the student has mastered these visualizations and has considered each of the 7 classifications of archetype, looking at the relationships between mind, body, and spirit, we then suggested consideration of archetypes in pairs, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6 and 7. You may continue in this form for the body and spirit archetypes. You will note that the consideration of the significator was left unpaired, for the significator shall be paired with archetype 22. Over to you, Andy.
Okay, thank you. At the end of this line of inquiry, the student was beginning to grasp more and more deeply the qualities and resonances of each archetype. At this point, using various other aids to spiritual evolution, we encourage the initiate to learn to become each archetype, and most importantly, to know as best as possible within your illusion when the adoption of the archetype's persona would be spiritually or metaphysically helpful.
So this is the tableau that shows the official LL Research tarot system. And we ordered it by the mind, body, and spirit. And each of them has a matrix, a potentiator, a catalyst, experience, significator, transformation, and the great way. So when we're saying that we're going to be doing them in trios, means we are going to look at the matrix, and we look at the matrix of the mind, of the body, and of the spirit. And then we move on to the potentiator of the mind, body, and spirit. So this is how we're going to begin the study. And then just for fun, I put in 2 more systems. This one is the Brotherhood of Light tarot system. And I think at the beginning, Don, Carla, and Jim used this deck of cards, but at some point they realized that they don't have copyrights, so they are not able to put them in the book. And this is why the other system that I just showed came up. And then there's the Rider-Waite system that a lot of people know and use, and that's just another representation of the archetype. You're all going to have access to these slides if you want to just look at them and contemplate on your own. Okay, so now I'm going to stop the recording if I know how to do it. And
Oh, I just wanted to add something actually.
oh yeah, sorry, of course.
In the guide, the contemplation guide that I've shared, I've said use whichever card system that you feel most resonates with you. But Ra does say that don't switch, like use one set for the whole study, and then if you want to switch, don't keep chopping and changing during the course of the study. And I think for the purpose of this group, perhaps we should choose the same one, but I'm not sure. Yeah, let's see how we can have a vote on it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording so we can do our discussion here.